Hello and welcome, one and all. Welcome to Time Between Times storytelling. And here we are, the start of the darkest week of all. Halloween, the time when the veil between our world and the fairy world grows so thin that we can reach into the other world and they can reach into our world for just a short amount of time. Thank you for joining me here, wherever you are, whoever you are, for another little insight, a little look, a little peer into the world of Welsh folklore. And tonight, to start this week, we're going to talk a little bit about a Brenin Llwyd. One of the darkest, scariest, spookiest, creepiest figures in all of Welsh folklore. So, before we go any further, let us sit back, relax, leave behind all those modern trappings, and join me for just a few moments in the time between times. The time when the veil between our world and the fairy world grows wafer thin. The time between times. The time of stories. The time that people see lights in the sky. And the time that people see ghosts. Today's story happened many, many years ago in the north of Wales, and it happened to a princess called Ellen. Ellen was a beautiful, dark-haired princess of the north, one of the fairest maidens in all of Wales. She was due to marry a great prince from South Wales, and she was unhappy. Her father had forced the marriage in order to bring together the north and the south in one great power. But Ellen loved to hunt. She loved to ride through the forests of North Wales, over the mountains, through the fields. And on this day, at the time between times, she did exactly that. She was riding through the fields, knowing that tomorrow she would be married, and that would be the end of her freedom. She rode over the mountains. She rode down by the rivers, riding back to her father's castle, feeling the wind in her hair. When suddenly, a horse slipped on a stone, throwing Ellen to the ground near the darkest forest. And she fell, hit her head on a stone, and languished in and out of consciousness. As she started to awake, every part of her body hurt, and her head was throbbing. A horse was nowhere to be seen. But out of the corner of her eye, at the edge of the forest, she could see a figure looking at her. A figure who seemed to be dressed in armour, although his face was bare and his face was fair. "Help me, sir," she called as she tried to get to her feet. Feeling staggered, her head was spinning, and the figure stepped out and spoke to her. "I am Wirt Gold. I am here to help you," he said. He helped Ellen to her feet and took her back to her father's castle. They spoke very little, but what he told her was that he lived in the forest. He was a warrior for her father. He would come to her aid whenever she needed it, and he wished her all the very best for her wedding the next day. They came back to her father's castle. Her father gave Wirt Gold a small reward, and just as they were about to part, he turned to Ellen and brought a small silver ring out of his pocket. "If you ever need me, just look at this ring and say, 'Wirt Gold, dewch yma.' Wirt Gold, come here, and I will be there to assist you." Very well. And with that he was gone. Ellen went up to her room, looked out over the kingdom from the window of her room, and could see very far. But no matter what she owned, on the morrow it would be nothing, for she would be married to the prince from South Wales and lose all her freedom. She could think of nothing but this stranger who had come to her aid from the forest. She felt that maybe she was in love with him. She felt that his kindness, his nature, made her feel so much better. Next to her bed, she placed the silver ring, and she held it up to the sky and said, "Wirt Gold, dewch yma. Wirt Gold, dewch yma." Before she could finish uttering the words, she heard a scrabbling at the window, and suddenly a figure leapt inside. It crouched next to her, then stood up, and as she turned around, she could see it was he. "You have called me, so let us go." He took her by the hand, and they left her room and went down the stairs to the great hall. Nearly everyone was there, was aslumber. "We will go here. My horse is down by the river. We will ride upon my horse, and we will ride far away, and you will never have to marry anyone you don't want to ever again," said Wertgold. Come with me, and let all your dreams come true." With that they left the castle, but as they did, some of the guards saw them. The horn blew and the bell rang, and all the guards rushed to try and stop, for it looked like the princess was being kidnapped. Wertgold and the princess rushed out of the castle, down through the fields, and they could hear the galloping of horses, the clanking of armour, as the troops rushed after them. It looked like they would be caught. So Wertgold turned to Ellen and he said, "Here is my knife. Use it if you have to. I will try and hold them off as best I can. Now go!" Ellen carried on running down to the river in the direction that Wertgold had told her where to go. But just as she was about to reach his horse, which was tied to a tree, just as he said, a hand touched her on the shoulder, causing her to spin round quickly and use the knife and stab the figure under the ribs, where she knew just where to hurt someone. To her horror, Ellen saw that it was her father who had tried to catch her. A father who she had loved greatly. He looked into her eyes, and she could see that he was hurt beyond measure. She could see that he was now about to die. She could see that she had made a terrible mistake. Her father slumped dead onto the ground. She could see more guards rushing towards her. And then standing by the tree next to the horse, she could see Wertgold. Slowly his body started to morph. His handsome features twisted and turned. His body cramped and went down and rolled until it became more ape than man. His features elongated, and out of his head grew the horns of a goat. His cloven feet burst from his boots, and she saw that this was no man. This was truly a creature of the forest, part ape, part goat, part cursed, wrangled man. The figure that was Wertgold looked her in the eye and sniggered. "Long ago I was cursed to live in the woods. Long ago I was cursed to live in the forest. Long ago I was told to pass my curse on to anyone I could. And now I will, for the kingdoms of North and South Wales will now never be one, but always apart, always sundered, always because of me." And with that, he vanished. Ellen went back to the castle. She never got over the death of her father. He lived to be old. She refused the wedding, and her father wasn't there to make it happen. So the two kingdoms were never together. As for Wertgold, he is what is known as the Brenin Llwyd, the Grey King. Many the walker, the hiker, the dog walker in all of Wales since has walked along the mountain paths through the forest, down by the streams, and out of the corner of their eye they catch a hunched figure sitting watching them from afar. Sometimes he is big, sometimes he is small. When approached, he staggers off into the forest with frightening speed. He has been known to knock on doors, place his face on windows and peer in. He is the Brenin Llwyd. Nobody knows what he is for. For hundreds and hundreds of years, and even up to this day, he is still seen sitting by the river, sitting on the rocks, just always just out of sight, waiting for another to pass his curse upon him. In the south of Wales, in the north of Wales, sometimes his cloven-feeted hooves make small tracks in the forest, in the snow. Tracks that lead to who knows where. Maybe the other world. But he is out there, at Brenin Llwyd. Thank you, my friends. I hope you enjoyed that. Please, if you're enjoying the stories, like, subscribe, and leave a nice comment. It's always good to know what you thought of these tales. As I said, my name is Owen Staton. This is Time Between Times Storytelling. And if you are watching this, the start of Halloween week, I hope to bring you a few more tales as the week goes on. But in the meantime, take care. Enjoy the tales. Stay safe. Look after yourself. All the best to you. No star.